Let's secure our Wi-Fi, shall we? This is our home internet, our home wireless, our local area network where we hook up our TVs, we watch our favorite shows, we browse the web, we check on our kids or grandkids online, and we really don't want bad guys coming in and using our computers or equipment to commit crimes. So let's secure our Wi-Fi. Why did I put that twice? Who knows? And think about your network at home the, as locking your door and shutting the windows, except the digital door and the digital windows. When you're at home, you know when somebody walks up to your door, it's going to ring the doorbell. You're going to get a motion detection, or they might just knock on the door. But when somebody's trying to knock on the door online, they're trying to get into your router at home and look around and see what kind of computers do you have and what resources are on the network. You might not easily know when they're poking around. So this module is to take a look at our home network setup and see if we can lock the doors a little bit and pick up all the best practices that we can. So first we have to think about, how does our internet get to the house? And it happens in a few ways. You may know this already. You may not know how you get your internet at home. You may just call somebody and they show up and it works. So let's generalize. You generally you have to pay for access to the World Wide Web and the internet. You usually pay through an internet service provider of some sort. We'll look at a few in a minute. And we call that, like going out into the wide world, we call that the WAN, the wide area network. And then that is going to come to your house. It's going to come into your house and connect to some kind of a modem. It's going to connect to that ISP and get an IP address. That's your internet protocol address for your house. This is how the ISP, your internet service provider, knows to bill you, and they know what you're doing online, what websites you're going to. When websites want to get back to you, they know where to send you. Everybody has an IP address. Every unique machine on the internet has to have an IP address. And then we'll connect from the modem. We'll usually connect, most of us, to a Wi-Fi router, unless they're combined. That's Some of them are combined. So the Wi-Fi router, that's where you would set up your wireless that you connect to. That's your local area network. Maybe you plug in your printer with an Ethernet cable. Maybe you connect your TV to your local Wi-Fi. That's your LAN. And then everything inside is your local network. Those are the devices. Those are the devices we're trying to protect. So there's lots of ways to get internet. You might have Spectrum. I had Spectrum for many, many, many years. I mean, it it was Spectrum, and it was something else before it was Spectrum, but it was cable internet all the way until this afternoon when I switched to AT&T and got fiber, and I'm talking to you on the fiber right now. And some and some people have Cox cable, or you might have T-Mobile 5G, just a little box that sits there. My friend has Starlink. You might have a Starlink, or you might travel with one. I know that Leisure World has their own ISP providing internet to the house, like to each room or to each property, I guess. And there are other providers, other ways to go. But the model's the same. You're going to get internet from the provider, and they're going to assign an address to that house, whether it's a condo or apartment. You know what I mean, like that one house. Now, most of the time, unless you're getting it from maybe the Leisure World doesn't do this. Most of the time, your fiber or your coax cable is going to go into some sort of a modem. A modem is one of those fun words where we take two different words and shove them together. So it's a modulator and demodulator, and it takes the signal from the ISP and converts it to something that your computers can talk to, and it does that back and forth. Now, the modem's job is to connect to the router. And like I mentioned a moment ago, sometimes the modem and the router are combined all in one. The AT&T fiber service that I just had installed today came with a giant a giant modem router combo,
Yeah.
and they didn't have the option of a single standalone modem. So I just have to live with this giant 10-pound thing that they have. But most of the time, your modem is separate. And I'll show you in the lab, I'll show you the cable modem I've been using for a while. It's just a little box usually, and its job is to pass all the traffic in and out of your house. And it usually just talks to the router. And most of us have Wi Fi routers because Wi Fi is very convenient. The Wi Fi router, that's your private, that's your home network. And the Wi Fi router has some jobs. Its most important job is to make all of your devices connect in like to that one IP address. So if I just went over to the chat real quick, if you have the chat open and just think about, take a moment and think about how many devices approximately do you think you have connected to your home network? That's your laptop, your phone, your Ring doorbell, your cameras, your network cameras, your televisions. You might have something like, I checked today and I have 47 devices connected to my home network.
Oh my goodness.
So think about that for a minute and type in the chat if you think like if because if you have a TV and an Apple TV and a Roku device and an Amazon stick, that's four. Maybe you have two TVs and two Rokus. Well, now we've gone up to 10 plus your laptop and your desktop and two phones. Like it's pretty easy to get to 15 or 20 devices. I see seven devices over there. So this is the job of your Wi-Fi router is to let all of those devices go out to the internet. Oh, I see more. 11, 6, 7. Yeah, this is pretty common. And each device inside your local network has to have its own individual address locally, and then the router has to keep track of, well, who asked to go to Facebook and who asked to go to Instagram and who is sending and receiving email, and make sure that your device gets it. It also enables your Wi-Fi SSID, and it's a powerful firewall built in. Even the old ones are powerful hardware firewalls, which a hardware firewall as opposed to the firewall built into Windows and Mac. Both are good, and we should use both. So just, I've already thrown out a bunch of terms, but I just want to go over the key terms real quick. Oh, I see a 15. That's a lot of devices on there. So when we're looking at our routers, sometimes we're going to see these terms. We're going to see WAN, the wide area network. That usually means like out to the internet or the web. Or you'll see LAN, that's your local area network. And Ethernet is that cable. I'll show you that during the lab time, that cable with a little weird sort of rectangular end that we click in. Coax, that's what the cable internet providers send down the line and plugs into that modem. You might see this term called DHCP. That is when your router assigns an IP address internally, and IP addresses have a certain format. So you'll see 192.168.1.10 or 1.11 or 1.12, and that's DHCP that assigns that. And then as a bonus, I'm going to add in updating your DNS, and DNS is how your computer goes and finds the specific site you want to go to. DNS is kind of like the phone book. You say, I want to go to Google. Well, it doesn't know where Google is, and you didn't tell it where Google is. It goes to the DNS service and asks, where's Google at right now, gets an IP address, and then takes care of that for you. So, in
Does
order to,
what does DNS stand for?
that is your domain name system.
Okay.
I got that here on your key terms. Okay, if you want to grab a screenshot, this is a good screenshot to grab, by the way. And thank you for asking. The more I kept throwing these terms into the talk, the more I realized I needed at least one slide that explained them all. Okay, so we're going to log into the router admin. And if you have already your router set up, you probably know how to do this already. It might say, open up your browser and go to 192.168.0.1 and then log in when you see the pop up there. Or it might say, open your browser and go to routerlogin.net or something like that. In my case, I'm using a travel router, so I can go to tplinkwifi.net, and then um, that will open up the interface for me. So you get logged in, and the newer routers, so the last 2 or 3 years of routers, they're going to have a unique username and password, usually on the router itself. This is much better than the old days. Just 5 years ago, I could log into almost anybody's router because it would just be admin admin or admin password or admin 1234. And the good companies will ask you to change your password the first time you log in. So that is actually the very first tip. So the first thing you want to do is change the admin password, because specifically because a lot of routers just use a default that you can search on the web and say, "Oh, what's the default password for the AX 1800?" And then you could log in and change somebody's network settings. That's not good for them. So the first thing we do when we log into our router is make an admin password. It doesn't have to be 100 characters, but if you make your long password that has 14 characters, or it's 2 or 3 words that you can write down, that's going to make your local area network as protected as it needs to be. And then the next thing to do for your home router, and I mention that because I don't do this for my hotspot or my travel router, but for your home router, you want to change the SSID. That SSID is the service set identifier. You don't need to know those terms, but the SSID is the part that you see when you go and you scan for Wi Fi, and it says ATTSH799963. That's a hassle. Change it to something that you like, right? Big Fluffy Dog's Wi-Fi, and then connect to Big Fluffy Dog's Wi-Fi. I would avoid using your address in it, like, oh, 1372 Yellowtail, only because then I know a little bit more about your house. Maybe that's not a bad password to give to people. Oh, the password is 1372 Yellowtail. Everybody can type that. But for the SSID, make it something fun. I like to call mine wireless secure. But change the SSID from the manufacturer's default.
Mm.
It seems small and minute. Oh, looked like my camera just randomly crashed there. It seems small and minute, but even just not identifying that you're an AT&T router or that you're using a TP link could help increase your security if there was a bad guy there. Then we want to set the encryption settings. In the Wi-Fi encryption, when you're setting this up, you're going to have the option to turn on encryption. You always want to have encryption. In the really old days, we would just have the Wi-Fi enabled, but then anybody could drive by or the neighbor could use the Wi-Fi. And the problem with that is, let's say your neighbor is using your Wi-Fi and they're fine, but then their cousins come over and the neighbor shares your Wi-Fi password with the cousins, or there's no password, so the cousins connect, and now the cousins get up to no good on the Wi-Fi, and the FBI shows up at your house, and there's no way to prove it wasn't you. And this has come up in court multiple times. Just put a password on it, and it's going to be much better for everyone. You also could have bad guys driving down the street. It used to be a thing called war driving, just trying to connect to the network and see what's there. Ooh, let's see if we can download some people's personal pictures. Uh, for hiding the SSID, I'm just going to address the question. Hiding the SSID doesn't stop anybody who's looking, anybody that knows how to look for an SSID. and it's probably more annoying for you. So it isn't a negative. So if you hide the SSID, that means you have to type it in exactly correct, or you won't be able to connect. And it won't stop me from finding it, but it will stop random passersby from connecting. So it's not terrible to hide, but it's a layer of defense and not a strong defense in and of itself. Which the follow up to that would be MAC address filtering, which is also another layer you can add for those of us that are a little more conscious, like in my chat. She and I will do that, but the rest of everybody probably don't hide your SSID or set up filtering. You want to turn on WPA3. That is very robust and strong encryption. And if you pair that with a decent password, something like we talked about on passwords, where you just get a couple of words together and it's, 15 characters, that's going to be virtually unbreakable. And if you
What
don't
did you
have
say that we turn on?
WPA3,
Okay.
and if it doesn't support WPA3, look for WPA2. That's Wi Fi protected access. And both of those are going to be pretty good and strong enough for certainly for our home use. You can make different arguments for secure military facilities, but that's not what we're doing here. So give it a good password. But with the Wi Fi password, I found that it should be something that you can tell your friend. So when Kathleen comes over and wants to get on the Wi-Fi, if your Wi-Fi password is 64 character gobbledygook, they're never going to get on the Wi-Fi. They're just going to be annoyed. But if it's Canning Garage Jumbo, okay, I could type that. That's fine.
But where do we go to do that? Where do we find this
Oh, that's when
WPA3?
you're going to log in to the router admin panel, which I'll show you what it looks like in the lab on a couple of routers. But this is whatever home Wi-Fi we have, we're going to log into that admin panel one of these ways, and that's where we're going to change the SSID and set up the encryption on that SSID. Chris says WPA2 PSK. That's the one you're going to want to choose because that's a pre-shared key
What?
PSK.
What is?
I'm just answering Chris's
Oh,
question, Kathleen. There's two Kathleens in here,
mm-hmm.
and just letting you know. Okay, so there's another feature. This is very important. Unless you are gaming on Xbox, you want to turn off universal plug and play. Every router has this on by default. Microsoft was having a problem. They wanted their gamers to be able to video chat with each other and have a really good connection peer to peer. So they have this technology that let the Xbox go to your router and configure it so that somebody else's Xbox can come into your network, they can connect. Unfortunately, it's been abused by bad guys forever, and it's usually the first thing that malware is going to do if it gets into your system, it's going to try and open up your router so that all the malware can come in. So first thing, we just turn it off. You don't need it, just turn it off. The other thing to turn off is this WPS Wi-Fi protected setup. That was a little convenience feature where you could push the button and connect your printer with a little pin, except it wasn't implemented properly, and anybody that wants to break into your Wi-Fi can do it with that WPS if you have it. So we just turn that off too if we can. I know it's kind of annoying. And then the next thing to really consider is, that thermostat that you got on Black Friday that connects to the Wi-Fi and lets you control your temperature from your phone from anywhere in the world. It's, $30 that you paid, or $40, whatever it was. It's not going to be the most secure, constantly updated network device. I personally don't trust those inexpensive devices on my network. So I use a guest network, and most routers have this option to set up a guest network, which separates the network traffic from your personal, your computer, your laptop, your phone, and puts all those devices like your cameras and doorbells and Amazon Echo devices, puts them on a separate network so that in case they get compromised, which can happen, it doesn't compromise your tax documents and your financial information on your personal laptop. So that's an easy fix now since most routers have the option to set up a guest Wi-Fi.
So you
And
would use that for Alexa or something like that.
exactly. Yeah, my Amazon Echoes are on the guest network. My cameras and my smart doorbell are on the guest network. I even have a garage door that connects to Wi-Fi and connects to an app. It's on the guest network. I don't want any of those weird devices. And if you go and look, say, oh, where's, let's say you're going to capture the network traffic. Where does this smart thermostat report back to? What's going back to the manufacturer in Shenzhen, China?
Yeah.
And they
Hey,
all are. And that's not to say that it's negative or positive, but that's what they're doing. And I don't feel like we have to trust it. So we just use a guest network for IoT devices.
comment.
Sable,
Yes.
that when you say use it for all of your Echo devices, etc., um, is there why is that more secure going through the guest network rather than just going through the standard network?
Well, I would normally set up a standard Wi-Fi that my computer will connect to. My
Right.
computer has all of my banking information
Ah,
and my tax information, and then the smart thermostat from Amazon Black Friday that might be phoning home to Shenzhen, China, might have the ability to be compromised. Maybe their security isn't so good, and somebody can access that and turn it into an enemy. What I mean is they can make it start scanning the network and looking for devices that they can compromise. So it's a good idea to just keep those other devices off of the network. Now,
okay.
ideally, you would just set up an entirely different router for that. But that's too far for most people. And we have guest networks, so even I don't set up a separate router just for the IoT. Does that
Comment.
does that make sense, Richard?
Yes, it does. And the only thing is, I'm just thinking, oh, how many things do I have on the on the regular network that now I got to move over to the guest?
Well, so
Over 150.
implementation wise, it's kind of a hassle to move them all. But what I would do is I'd set up a guest network and maybe move one or two, and then whenever you get something new, put it on the IoT network. Put it on the guest. Whenever you
Great
get new stuff.
suggestion.
Would
Yeah,
you put
great
your phone
suggestion.
in your
Thank you.
printer?
Um,
Would
Say,
you
say that
would you
again,
put the
Lynette.
phone would you put your phone and your printer on the guest network?
No, I would
no.
keep those on the real network. My phone, my printer. Yeah, but the television, the TVs, put that
Uh-huh.
on your guest network. Those TVs are spying
Really?
on you. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
sure.
you don't care if China looks into your TV.
Well, Vizio was scanning everything you watched and sending it back and taking up tons of network traffic. That might
Uh-huh.
make my just using my phone, that could make using my phone slow. So throw it on the guest network. That's
So do you
fine.
think they still do that?
Yes. That's how they can sell you TVs so cheaply.
They come,
Absolutely. And
uh,
for what it's worth, my Samsung or my LG TV that I bought last year is not connected to my network. It has all kinds of beautiful features to do everything I want, and I don't use any of them. So
Why?
because I don't want to deal with it on the network. I just I don't trust it.
But you have it on a guest network.
I don't even let it connect to my guest network. I just use an Apple TV to watch everything, and my LG is a giant 65-inch beautiful screen that's 4K.
and besides, you have an auto mode. You put it on auto, it does all the adjustments.
Yeah, there you go. So
I
the
have a
big
comment.
the big one to check, and this is where not usually where home users get in trouble, but enterprise users often get in trouble with this, and that's having remote administration turned on. We don't want somebody from the from the internet, from the WAN, to be able to access the admin panel of your router, because then they have the same access that you do. They can do anything. So we want to verify that that's turned off. It usually is turned off on a home router, but that's something we want to check. And I have this checklist as an image for you in Canvas, so you don't have to write these down.
Okay.
Okay. Now, a couple more things to add on. You definitely want to check your router firmware. The router companies will, on the newer routers at least, they will send out updates when a vulnerability has been found and reported. Sometimes they'll do it automatically, although I haven't found that very often. But you have something like an Eero, the Eero can go update automatically and reboot in the middle of the night. Some of the some of the other, like the Orbeez, some of those will do it for you. Um,
So
I
you
don't think,
do this on that admin panel that,
yeah, all of this is through the admin panel that we're going
okay,
to go through after the break.
good, good, good.
So just a couple more points here. One, your router controls how all of the devices in your network go and look things up on the internet. So when they do a DNS query, most of the time it goes to your local provider. So let's say you have AT&T. Well, AT&T monetizes all of your DNS. Verizon, when you're using a Verizon phone, they sell all of your data of all the websites you go to.
Huh.
And some ISPs, I don't know that any of our local ones here do it, but some ISPs have even inserted ads into pages that you're browsing when you use their DNS. So I always go in and manually change the DNS, and there's tons of options. Maybe we'll do next semester a class just on updating DNS, but I like using Cloudflare. Cloudflare, even though they've had a couple of issues lately, they're very reliable DNS. They um, they have a high secure and trustworthy DNS. Quad 9 is very privacy based. You might like Google. I find it to be a little slower, but you can set Google DNS. And then you have some options. Open DNS lets you have certain settings, and then everybody likes this Next DNS where you can go in and block ads and do other things on your home network. So those are options. You don't have to do that at first, but I just wanted to know that this is something that you might consider changing at the router because it affects all the devices. The
Google,
next,
you think that Google is reliable? I mean, they're always spying, it seems like.
well, sure, but the Google DNS is going to try not to send you to known malware sites if possible.
Oh, okay.
So Google's not a privacy option, but Google is doing as much or more for cybersecurity than anybody else in the world. So yeah, they're making money on ads, but they're also doing lots of great things. So it's, personal preferences. I don't use the Chrome browser, but I sure appreciate Google keeping Chrome up to date and secure. So should you ever reboot your router? Yeah, at this point you should just reboot it once in a while, whenever you think about it, probably not more than once a month. Or if it ever feels slow, just turn it off for 10 seconds, turn it back on. In 2018, the FBI had sent out these notices. Even my aunt and uncle got them and asked me about it
Hmm.
because these older routers were getting compromised and the malware was living in the RAM. So when you rebooted the router, it got rid of the malware.
Oh,
And finally, if your router is very old, if it's 5 years old or older, it might be time to consider a new one. If you're not getting updates or if you don't have WPA2 available, then there may be security vulnerabilities that your router's not protecting you from. And sometimes even the brand new routers can be problematic. When I first bought my Netgear mesh router system, I noticed it was crashing occasionally. And so I went to look in the logs, and the router was under attack 24/7 from all over the internet, being scanned, being probed. And every couple times a week, something would hit it and it would crash. It was
Oh,
kind of
wow.
annoying. So it's happening to everybody. It, most of us don't notice it. I happen to be one of the weird ones that looks for that sort of thing. But if your router is getting old and it's not performing well, it might be worth to spend $50 or $100 and go pick up a new one to replace. And then you
My
can go through
router,
and do all the settings.
my router was given to me. It's with the my internet provider service.
Right. So that's the other part. A lot of ISPs are providing routers, and if you take a few minutes and call them and say, "Hey, my router's being really slow," they can look and tell you if maybe it needs an update or maybe it can be rebooted or maybe they'll just send you out with a new router. I've seen people get really nice new modern routers with all the features. So it's getting better, I think. But if you still have an old one, you might want to take a look at it. So I'm going to take a couple more questions before we take a break, and then we'll go to the lab where I'll log into my live router and show you a couple different options here, including some show and tell that I have on the desk behind me, Ethernet cables and modem and all that kind of thing. So anything for the YouTube portion before we take a break?
Question.
Yes, sir. Ram, you muted yourself. Right when you said question, you muted yourself. You want to ask that again? You're still muted, Ram. All right, I'm gonna switch over to Alan, and then we'll come back to you, Ram. Alan, yes.
Hi, Sable. Cox versus AT&T, I'm in Mission Viejo. It looks like AT&T, if you're a heavy user, from what I'm researching, might be better to go with. I have Cox right now. I've been happy with it. It looks like AT&T is a little bit cheaper, not much. I was wondering if you had any feelings about Cox versus AT&T.
Are you have cable internet with Cox, right?
Correct.
And it's been fine. I think they're rock solid. If you're not overpaying, like Spectrum was charging me way too much before I called and complained. I took
Okay.
Kathleen Louie's advice. It took me 6 months too long, but I called and complained and got the price cut down. For me personally, the choice was cable internet or fiber. And
Right.
fiber optic uses lasers. I like lasers. I like light data travel, and I'm getting 20 times the upload speed that I was getting on cable, which might not matter for you, but for myself, doing Zoom meetings and uploading things, it makes a big difference.
Got it.
So I've always told my family the day that fiber was available, we're switching, and it took 16 years, but I kept my word. The first day it was available, I switched. So
Wow.
again, Alan, keep it. But if you want to save a few bucks, we're gonna use Kathleen's trick. Call them up and say, "Hey, I've been looking at AT&T for internet, and they have some really good prices. Should
Right.
I leave?" And I'll
Yeah,
bet they'll
no, you're
drop
right.
you.
Yeah,
I'll bet they'll drop you $10 a month.
exactly. Thank you.
Lynn,
Oh, yes. Can you not set your router to auto reboot?
well, I haven't seen that setting in any router that I've looked at, but it might be a setting in some routers. I just haven't heard of it. The people that I know that want to have a regular rebooting router have a separate power switch that they plug it into, and that power switch can be manually turned off and on or set on a timer. But since your router's probably sitting maybe in the living room or somewhere nearby, you could just pull the power out, wait a few seconds, and put the power back if you need to. Yes, Ray.
Yes, just a little update. I loved fiber when I was in New York. I moved out to California and got Cox. And then but I was very unhappy with Cox, and I switched over to T-Mobile 5G since I was one of the pilot people. I'm in San Juan Capistrano. And 2015, 2016, I changed over in a pilot program with them. I love it. I love it.
It's affordable and it works great for you, I think.
$35 a month.
Yeah, you got the best deal.
But that's not fiber.
No, it's
No, it's
wireless.
over the air. It's 5G.
It's
No
5G.
cables in the house. I plug it. I plug it into the wall, and that's it. There's nothing else. There's no other cable in the house.
Yep.
20, and I can do up to 20, devices.
Yeah, it's a pretty good deal.
Well,
But
the
you still need to log in and do these security updates on it.
Yes.
Cox I absolutely despise, but I have Frontier because it's fiber optic, but
Mhm.
their price keeps going up. I just happen to look at my bank statement today and go, wait a minute, that's not what I was paying.
I might give him a call. A buddy of mine just switched over to Frontier and got 5 GB.
That's what I've got,
That's an incredible. I
but
told
it's
I
a
told
lot.
the
It's
AT&T
a lot.
guys,
It's double. It's almost double what Ray's paying.
Yeah.
yeah, well, give him a call. I think the going rate is probably 80 or $90.
When I was in New York, I had Verizon, fiber optics, which and then they stopped using it, and Frontier bled out Verizon in New York area. But then I moved out here to California.
And we're glad to have you, Ray. Ram, can I get your question before we stop the video?
Yeah. I'll go last comment first, which is that Laguna Woods Village is getting fiber for everyone by beginning of next year. Half of the village already has it. Bandwidth is not so much, only 2,000 megabytes, 2,000 gigabytes, give or take. So that's 10 times the maximum speed of today that we have. Secondly, I've used a guest password for services like you said, and also for guests. When guests come, okay, so because it's for guests, I give it a password that is very nice to be a guest. Plenty of letters, plenty of characters, and it's very easy to remember.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
Some phrase that everybody knows, and that's also easy to change. The only thing is, I still have to figure out completely how to change in one fell swoop all the things connected to the guest. And there's a way to do it. I just am still working on it. I'm not that.
Well, you've brought up a big problem when we get a new Wi-Fi router, and that's so you got 15 things connected, and it's going to take you all afternoon to change all 15 things to a new password and SSID. So when I upgrade, I use the same SSID and the same password for my guest and for my main Wi-Fi. And then sometimes I have to like reboot the doorbell or the camera, but I don't have to go back into the configuration. Oh, how did I configure this? Do you push the button or do you open the app or how do you, I don't worry about that. I
Yeah,
keep them the same once they're set up.
How can you do that? How do
When
you?
you in the router administration panel, you can do that.
Will we be doing that in the second half of the class?
Yes, I'm going to show you a couple of login panels.
There was one more thing that I want to say. That is, I hardly ever used the modem and router from the provider, the cable provider, whatever, simply because you can get a better one. So it costs a few bucks, but then you also don't pay every month the rental, so to speak. It's between $5 and $10 a month. Well, that's $120 a year.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and if they don't change it for a few years, you're out a lot more than a real good router costs, and the real good ones also have a fairly good bandwidth, so you don't have an issue with bandwidth either. So that's a comment that I have for friends too. You know, don't pay $5 or $10 a month. It's ridiculous. Just get yourself a good one. Do a little research on Google, find out what you need, and go and buy it. If you buy it online, it's not even expensive.
Yeah, I'll show everyone the modem. I bought my own cable modem maybe 18 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
So instead of paying $10 a month for the cable modem from the cable company, I've bought 2 cable modems in that time for about $200.
Mm-hmm.
So, okay, well, let me end this video. We'll take a break and then we'll come back to the lab. I'll do some hands-on. Thanks,
All
everybody.
right.